And we have the final cleanup of the crash westbound Antelope Drive in Syracuse at 2000 West on the right. While you were spring cleaning, did you check your drains? From kitchen sinks to main lines, Big Brothers Home Services is here for you 24/7 because their motto is We Do More. Visit them at bigbrothershomeservices.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, winds dying down, and then partly cloudy skies with a high around 73. It'll warm up through the rest of the week. Right now, 60 degrees, mostly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM at KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Your message has consistently been that you are here to open up lines of communication to avoid a military clash. But you just said China did not agree to open that military to military line of talks. Did Xi Jinping just say no?
It's a work in progress.
That was Margaret Brennan from CBS asking the question of Secretary of State Blinken about his conversations with with President Xi of China. Blinken clearly saying it's a work in progress. So after Secretary Blinken met with President Xi, there were some questions in terms of, was this a success? Was it a failure? Was it something in between? And so getting beyond the headlines, without an agreement, can this still be called a success? What came out of it? Why does it matter? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, we are going to go beyond the headlines to look at what are the takeaways from the meeting in China. And to do that, of course, we always turn to Olivier Knox, national political correspondent and anchor of the Daily 202 for the Washington Post. And Olivier, welcome back to the show.
Thanks very much.
Let's dive into this. It's easy to say, well, he came back with a swing and a miss or a little empty-handed, but I think there's more to it than that. What were your takeaways from the trip?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're doing the success-failure question, I think it's something in between. I mean, you have to allow for the fact that diplomacy does occasionally have its major theatrical moments, like Nixon going to China, but most of it is actually just toiling away and letting the head of state, be the one to reveal the success. I do think that there were things that were high on Tony Blinken's agenda during this trip to China. By the way, the first Secretary of State to visit China since 2018 that he didn't get. And I can't just let that, slide on by. He wanted to reopen military-to-military lines of communication that China shut down in retaliation for then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Didn't get that. Okay, they've been trying for a while now. From Biden on down, officials have been asking the Chinese to please come back to the phone, in effect. Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, has made this plea. Biden has made something like this plea. Blinken has made this plea. White House spokespeople have made this plea, and it didn't happen. And part of the problem is that the Chinese view this less as a way of avoiding confrontation and more as a way of facilitating American challenges to their power in the region. But he did not get that. The other big item, and this is, I think, the only item that the average American will care about, the only other major item on there was to get more Chinese cooperation to combat fentanyl, the synthetic opioid that's now the leading cause of death for Americans between the ages of 18 and 49. Fentanyl is considerably more powerful than heroin. It also comes out of your system faster, so you need more hits more frequently, et cetera. So your overdose risk is very high. Right now, it's mostly being manufactured by Mexican cartels, but it's being manufactured using these precursor chemicals that come from China. This has been an irritant for a while. China has mostly stopped sending fentanyl direct through the mail to Americans. Now it's sort of this bank shot where it goes through the cartels. What Blinken got there was a Chinese agreement to consider setting up a working group to discuss how to combat fentanyl. Now, I deliberately sketched out that way to show you there's not much to this agreement, right? They're going to talk about talking about it.
Where it always begins.
So that's not, yeah. Well, and fair enough. Maybe fair enough. Maybe that is where this begins. But that was not a really big win.
Yeah.
So those are two of my big ones. The thing is, though, for a Biden administration that was desperate to get back to talking to the Chinese, that worked. I mean, it looks like the stage. First of all, the visit actually happened. It had been set for February, and then we had the Chinese spy balloon thing. It happened. It now looks like the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, will be heading to China. It looks like John Kerry, President Biden's climate envoy, will be going over there. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo may be going over there. So, great. Let's have the pace of diplomatic conversation continue.
Yeah, and I think that is the important part of all of this. And you said something right off the bat, Olivier, that I want to go back to because it's often missed. And a lot of diplomacy is hard work and heavy lifting by a lot of staffers. And staffers include secretaries of state and people like Janet Yellen and a host of others. And then the principals, the presidents, get to do the big reveal and get to do the big announcements of those kinds of things. And so while I think it's easy for people to just dismiss it, the fact that they're at least talking about something is part of that whole diplomatic dance, especially as it relates to China. And they are always playing the long game. They are not in the rush of the 24-hour news cycle or the pace that most Americans would like to get to. One of the other things that you pointed out in your piece today, Olivier, that I think is super important for us to dig into a little bit, and that is dealing with Taiwan. Where are we really? Who's freaking out about it? Give us some perspective there.
Yeah, this is one of those, as someone who likes to study foreign policy, I would never call myself an expert, but as someone who likes to study foreign policy, this was sort of an annoying mini news cycle. So Blinken comes out and says, we do not support Taiwan independence. And the entire right-wing ecosphere in America goes crazy.
Meltdown.
A full meltdown. People saying this is capitulation. Biden and Blinken are bought and paid for. That was a recurring theme, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that opposing a formal declaration of independence by Taiwan has been American policy for decades under presidents of both parties. Not even Donald Trump favored Taiwan's independence. So the meltdown is, some of the folks who I saw were having a meltdown, I'm perfectly willing to believe we're doing this in good faith. Enes Kanter Freedom was talking about this, and I get it, and I don't think he has any agenda, but there were relatively senior members of Congress who were making the same claim. And again, what U.S. policy is, and it's complicated and it's full of very curious diplomatic rhetoric, but what U.S. policy is to oppose unilateral changes to the status quo. Okay, so China shouldn't invade, which it has threatened to do. China shouldn't invade, and Taiwan should not formally declare independence, which, by the way, would probably trigger an invasion. So what that does is it enshrines the status quo. And the status quo is that Taiwan is a self-governed, democratically self-governed island, effectively independent. So it was a completely unwarranted freakout. If you want to argue that the Biden administration is not selling enough weapons to Taiwan or not selling the right weapons to Taiwan, there are criticisms to make on that score, but not based on a decades-old acknowledgement that the United States does not support Taiwan unilaterally declaring its independence.
Yeah, so interesting. And a lot of that, I think, goes even to some of the things that President Biden has said in terms of what the policy is or isn't. And again, that confusion about a policy that is confusing in and of itself doesn't take us to some very confident spaces in terms of what it actually all means.
Yeah, 100%. I think a big part of the good faith reaction was anchored in President Biden saying, 4 times since late summer, early fall of 21, that the United States would come to Taiwan's defense militarily if China invaded. Now, for decades, pre-Biden, the policy was called strategic ambiguity. If that sounds weird and weaselly, I understand. But the idea was that the U.S. would not formally say one way or another where it would come down.
Yeah.
So Biden has shattered that. And I'm sorry, all the anonymous White House officials who keep trying to walk back his statements and saying nothing's changed, the policy is the same. It is not. Biden has made a clean break with strategic ambiguity. He's declared, again, 4 times, one time maybe, but 4 times that we would do this. And that, that can sound like a defense of Taiwan's independence.
Yeah.
And as I pointed out in the column, it kind of is, except it's not a defense of Taiwan's formally declaring independence, which is what Blinken was getting at.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, and we will continue to have you come back to unravel all of the ebbs and flows and the delicate diplomatic dance that is China-U.S. relations right now. Olivia Knox, national political correspondent and anchor of the Daily 202 for the Washington Post, and it should be part of everyone's day. That's just my flat-out statement. It'll make you smarter, it'll make you think, and it'll give you a great perspective. And, Olivia, we always appreciate you carving out some time for us.
Thank you for the lack of strategic ambiguity there.
We're very declarative when it comes to smart people doing smart things, so we'll continue down that path. Thanks, Olivier.
Thank you.
All right, great perspective as always from Olivier Knox from the Washington Post, and so many important things because it's easy to get caught in the headlines of all of this and which side freaks out about what and who's upset about this or mad about that. The important thing is there was a beginning of a conversation. And that's a good thing in terms of de-escalation. There is a lot of ambiguity, and whether it's strategic or not, I'm not sure anybody really knows the answer to that. But there are hard questions that we have to continue to ask and get answers for on a wide range of things, from human rights to fentanyl to things around intellectual property and a host of other things. So it is a delicate dance. It is very complicated. We're so interdependent in so many ways. The important thing is that we make sure that the principles that drive the country continue to drive our diplomacy.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Right on cue for summer.
OPEC plans to cut oil production.
Gas prices are headed up.
But people say they are not calling off their trips.
Whether you're planning a staycation or a day trip, start your summer here. Get updates on traffic out of town, gas prices, and everything you need to know. Listen each day this summer, mornings and afternoons, to KSL News Radio.
Getting close to retirement? Or have you retired? You've probably got a ton of stress-filled questions on your mind. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth. Getting a second opinion with an individualized investment plan is vital, and our fiduciary advisors do just that. Take it from this Trajan Wealth client.
It was just so pleasant, so comfortable. I think we had 7 different accounts, just stuff scattered all over the place. And then so we just started, here's this, move this. And he even explained it a couple different times. But if I have more questions, he said, just give us a call. And that's what I love. He's a phone call away. I'm glad I know these guys. Such a huge weight off my shoulder.
Imagine not second-guessing investments or monthly retirement income. That's the peace of mind you'll get from working with Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600 today or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Actual client, no compensation, no conflicts. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
This is Jeff Kaplan, and I am a blue razzmatazz guy. Now, I know maybe you're all about Simply Mango or maybe Tiger's Blood. No judgment, but when it comes to the highly personal decision of your favorite Frazzle flavor, blue razzmatazz is my jam. Well, really, it's my slushie. Frazzle, in case you don't know, is a delicious, refreshing slushie sold at convenience stores. Frazzle got its start here in Utah 20 years ago, and now you find Frazzle machines at convenience stores from coast to coast. If you've never tried Frazzle, or even if you're already a fan like me, get one free on Free Frazzle Friday, every Friday through June at participating locations. They're celebrating Free Frazzle Friday at Holiday Oil, Maverick, Top Stop, and many other convenience stores. Limit one per person, but load up the car. Bring the kids. Everybody gets a 12-ounce Frazzle free. For locations and more, get the Frazzle app or go to freefrazzlefriday.com. Maybe you love Georgia Peach or Tangerango. You're going to love the Frazzle flavors.
The biggest RV show in the region is growing. The Utah Summer RV Palooza is back and bringing the heat to Sandy, June 22nd through the 24th. For 3 days only, the shops at Southtown will be packed with the largest selection of new and used RVs in the region. Shop brands like Ember, Forest River, Northwood, and more. You'll even find the hard-to-get GoPlay 26BH bunkhouse travel trailer at a sales price of only $19,995. But that's not all the summer savings we're serving up. Save up to 20% below cost on select new 2022 RVs. Yeah, up to 20% under cost. We're also offering 90 days no payments on approved credit for all play and no pay until September. Plus, right now, we'll trade anything. Bring your trade to the show and we'll hook you up. Don't miss your chance to enter to win a brand new $30,000 RV. No purchase necessary. See rules for details. All during the Utah Summer RV Palooza in Sandy. Only June 22nd through the 24th at the shops at Southtown. Sponsored by Bish's RV.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. The same people you know and trust, providing Utah with the same great service you've counted on for more than 45 years. We're even throwing in a great offer for you. Say yes and beat the summer heat with our $49 tune-up special. For all your heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical needs, you can always count on Yes. Visit theyesmancan.com to schedule your appointment.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the Utah Jazz will broadcast their games live on free TV this season. Second, Rio Tinto plans to invest almost $1 billion in Kennecott's operations in Utah. And third, the clock is ticking for the 5 people aboard a missing submersible in the North Atlantic. Rescuers know they have less than 2 days' worth of oxygen left. Right now, 60 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
We're going to stay with the question just a little bit longer as it relates to China. Of course, Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in China over the weekend, met briefly with President Xi, and we're going to stay with that a little bit. We want to dig into one of the aspects that we just heard. If you missed our first segment of the program, we were talking with Olivier Knox from the Washington Post, who really had an excellent deep dive and some analysis beyond the headlines when it comes to what that meeting was about, what it did and did not do, where the ambiguity continues to be, and what needs to be clarified moving forward. Well, one of the major talks on the table during Secretary Blinken's trip to China was fentanyl. China has been caught selling the precursor chemicals for fentanyl to drug cartels in Mexico. Last month, we spoke to Washington Post reporter Nick Miroff, who really did an extensive deep dive look at the Chinese companies indicted by the United States for selling those very chemicals that are, again, the precursor to fentanyl. And I want to go back to this conversation with Nick Miroff because this is important. And I asked him specifically what we've learned from these recent indictments about China's role in the fentanyl crisis. Take a listen.
Yeah, well, initially, a lot of the attention when this indictment was first unsealed, the attention focused on the main targets, who are the sons of Sinaloa cartel boss El Chapo Guzman. And El Chapo, as listeners will probably remember, was the cartel boss who was arrested, escaped from prison, and he's now locked up in U.S. federal prison. He's been sentenced to life in U.S. prison, but his sons have really inherited part of the drug trade and part of his former organization, and they became, according to these U.S. indictments, specialists in fentanyl and in establishing the Sinaloa cartel's dominance over really the whole North American fentanyl trade. And a key part of that was revealed in these indictments are the role of Chinese companies in providing the precursor chemicals used to make fentanyl. And so among the 23 suspects who were indicted by the Department of Justice, there are 4 Chinese chemical brokers, and according to the indictment, they were working with basically an agent of the Sinaloa cartel who was based in Guatemala. She was helping to acquire these chemicals. They were then shipped, in some cases, through ports in the United States, including Alaska and New York, eventually making their way to the mountains of the Sierra Madre in Mexico, where the Sinaloa cartel cooks were turning the chemicals into deadly fentanyl.
Wow, that is something. So as this indictment was unsealed, you mentioned that it was really tracking those chemicals from the Wuhan region there of China into all kinds of different ports. You said even including Alaska, and then onto the cartels where they're transformed into fentanyl and then back into the United States. And so as you look at that playing out, then we know China has continued to dismiss and deny any involvement in any kind of precursor chemicals or anything like that. But what does this indictment tell us? And then what's the next step in this process?
Well, I mean, one of the unfortunate parts of this story is that the tensions in the U.S.-China relationship, particularly over Taiwan, have dealt a blow to, whatever positive steps were taken in terms of narcotics cooperation, because it was only a few years ago that China agreed to schedule, fentanyl as an illegal drug. That is often viewed as a big turning point when these Chinese companies could no longer ship fentanyl directly, and so that's when the Mexican cartels really just started sourcing the precursor chemicals and making the fentanyl themselves. Now, in the years since then, cooperation with China and the U.S. has really fallen apart. And one of the, interesting episodes of this was the Mexican president, after talking to U.S. lawmakers concerned about fentanyl's toll. This is the Mexican president, Andres Manuel López Obrador. He wrote a letter to Chinese Premier Xi asking him to crack down on fentanyl, and the Chinese government since then has basically said no illegal fentanyl is going from China to Mexico. So really kind of denying even China's role. And that just underscores how difficult it's going to be for the United States to either, apprehend, let alone try these 4 Chinese nationals.
Yeah, that's such an interesting thing. And I appreciate you bringing up the fact that with these strained relationships over Taiwan, it does make it all the more difficult. We talk a lot on this program about this ability to have these strategic alliances, to know that we're going head to head with people on a host of things, but yet we also have to come together on others. And fentanyl is one of those. North Korea is another one where, we're going to battle China on economy and trade rights and copyrights and all of those other different things, and yet we've got to come together on some of these things to deal with that, and so that's clearly a blow to that we can't get over that hurdle. Are there other areas or other places that we ought to be looking to make progress in dealing with fentanyl in particular?
Well, I think the U.S. Strategy is going to be is going to remain focused on Mexico and really going after the cartels. Mexico, unlike China, has a much closer relation to the United States, even though there are new tensions in that U.S.-Mexico relationship. But clearly there's room to do more. The United States wants to have a greater role in assisting Mexican security forces go after Mexican traffickers. And the U.S. is trying to do more internally, and at the border, there's a new, operation underway at the border to try to seize more fentanyl. Where the Biden administration is spending hundreds of millions to install new scanning machines that can do a better job detecting drugs hidden inside vehicles. So, I think in the absence of being able to get more cooperation with China, the U.S. authorities are just going to have to do more closer to home.
Yeah, and I want to get your take on this really quick, Nick, that we talk a lot about immigration on one hand. We sort of conflate all of these things together in terms of immigration, and we've got the ending of Title 42 and the rush of people coming across the border and all of that, and yet it still seems to me that the vast majority of the fentanyl coming in is coming in to the U.S. by U.S. citizens at U.S. checkpoints, as opposed to a lot of these other places where we kind of have this visual of how things are coming in. How do you see that from your perspective, covering both immigration enforcement and homeland security issues?
Sure. No, it's a great question. And what we can do is we can look at the data, and the data from Customs and Border Protection says about 87% of all the fentanyl that they seize, that the U.S. government seizes along the border, is detected at those ports of entry, at those official border crossings. And why is that? It's because it's coming inside vehicles. And you got to just, everyone's got to keep in mind, these drug trafficking organizations are like illegal businesses, and they are looking for the cheapest, most efficient, and reliable way to get their product into the United States. And that means hiding it inside passenger vehicles or sending it with body carriers or pedestrians who are walking through. They're not going to, in most cases, just give it to some random, migrant from Guatemala who's trying to get in the United States to find a job. Yeah. They're gonna use their network of trusted couriers, and oftentimes the person who's going to have the best chance is a U.S. citizen who is working with them, who is willing to accept a payment of a few $1,000s to try to smuggle some fentanyl into the United States.
Great insight, great perspective, as always. Nick Miroff, a reporter covering immigration enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security for the Washington Post. Great piece in the Washington Post. Nick, thanks so much for joining us. Always appreciate your perspective and helping us divide the rage from the reason when it comes to all of this. Thanks for jumping on today.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Boyd.
More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. A major retailer and a 4-story apartment complex could be on the way at the current site of the Cache Valley Mall in Logan. KSL News Radio's Adam Small has details.
The Cache Valley Mall could be leveled by the end of the year if the city approves a plan to build more than 340 apartment units, a hotel, and a space big enough to fit one of America's largest retailers. A Nebraska-based developer tells Cache Valley Daily the mall has been in decline for 15 years due to a changing market and the loss of some of its biggest stores. It's widely believed Target could fill the empty retail space since the city already has a Costco, Walmart, and Sam's Club. The developer meets with the Planning Commission again on Thursday. Adam Small, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The Pentagon has corrected an accounting error that overestimated the value of weapons sent to Ukraine. The discrepancy valued at close to $3 billion. Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh.
This has no bearing on appropriated USAI or Ukraine PDA replenishment funding approved by Congress.
The mistake means the Pentagon could actually send more weapons to Ukraine without asking Congress for additional appropriations. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down 216 points on the day. The NASDAQ is down about 18. And our KSL weather, we're looking for the clouds to disappear tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
With our roots in northern Utah, Holy Cross Hospital has a legacy of caring to help every person be whole and healthy. Find us at 5 Holy Cross Hospital locations and more than 45 clinics along the Wasatch Front. Learn more at holycrossutah.org.
At Holy Cross Hospital, we're honored to carry the legacy of our namesake and equally honored to care for northern Utah's vibrant communities. Find us at 5 Holy Cross Hospital locations and more than 45 clinics along the Wasatch Front. Learn more at holycrossutah.org.
Experience the rail journey of a lifetime and see the Southwest like never before on board Rocky Mountaineers' Rockies to the Red Rocks route. You'll take in vast canyons and breathtaking mountains between Moab and Denver. You'll enjoy world-class all-inclusive food and beverage service on board a glass-domed train with a view unimaginable. You'll stay one night in historic Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and look forward to the next day's adventure winding along towering canyons, breathtaking plains, and magnificent mountains. You'll ride the rails through Ruby Canyon and admire the scenery through oversized windows, a view you'd never see from a car. Rocky Mountaineer is truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and they've extended their latest offer. Till June 30th, save up to $1,000 per couple. And as a Utah local, you can save an extra $100 per person. Seats are limited. Visit RockyMountaineer.com before June 30th to book your luxurious, exciting adventure right now. That's RockyMountaineer.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
Emergency crews are responding to an auto versus motorcycle or bike crash with injuries on Wasatch Boulevard, about 6700 South, 3500 East. Also an accident on the on-ramp to northbound I-15 from Geneva Road in Linden, blocking a left lane. The Utah Symphony's Deer Valley Music Festival in Park City features Ben Folds, Leanne Rimes, the Beach Boys, and more, June 30th through August 4th in Park City at DeerValleyMusicFestival.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. Winds die down today. Partly cloudy skies tomorrow with a high around 73. And warming up through the rest of the week. Right now, 63 degrees, mostly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, trying to get things done with a labor shortage is no small task, but imagine doing a 3-person job all by yourself. Well, that's what a lot of farmers across Utah are actually struggling with on a daily basis. The farm industry in Utah is reliant on migrant labor, and right now it's struggling to find workers to help put food on the table. KSL News Radio's Hugo Ricard Bell investigated this problem in a deep dive look. He started with a farmer in Ogden. Take a listen to this.
My name is Baltasar Escalona Sampaio. I have been here in the United States for 8 years with this boss.
Baltasar is from Mexico. He works on this farm and sends what he earns back to his family.
I have my house, I have my truck, thanks to this job. My family lives. I can say they're not lacking anything, but they don't have too much either. We have a stable life. Both my mother and my son and my wife are not lacking, thank God, and they have a house to live in, thank God.
Baltasar's boss is Ron Gibson. He's the president of the Utah Farm Bureau, and he runs a mixed farming operation in Ogden.
Our family's been here for a dang long time. We've been here on the same farm since 1869. We milk about 15 to 1,600 cows, depending on what time of the year it is. And then we also have a produce farm, and we grow quite a few onions, and we're kind of developing that as we
To be fully operational, his farm requires up to 60 people. But staff like Baltasar are hard to come by nowadays, and have been for some time.
How has labour been for you in the last couple of years?
It's been really, really hard pre-COVID and extremely difficult post-COVID. The challenge is that nobody comes looking for jobs anymore.
Utah farmers rely heavily on migrant labour from south of the border. It's been that way for generations. But in the last few years, something has changed.
20 years ago, we used to have 5-10 people a week coming around looking for a job. 10 years ago, we used to have people coming looking for jobs. Now nobody comes looking for jobs.
It's easy to point the finger at COVID-19. Pandemic-era policies like Title 42 essentially put a stop to immigration for 3 years. So now that it's lifted, will we see this problem solved?
We don't really think so. It just seems like...
There are several reasons why the end of Title 42 is unlikely to have an impact on agricultural labour shortages. Firstly, we need to consider it's a different type of immigrant crossing the border. They are fleeing conflict from countries like Venezuela, and most of them are well educated and held professions like doctors or lawyers and teachers.
It just seems like it's been a long time since people have come around looking for jobs on the farm.
Secondly, the H-2A work visa. It was actually active throughout Title 42. It's tailored to agriculture and has been used by farmers for years now to get workers legally.
We can use the H-2A program for our produce farm. We cannot use it for our dairy farm. It's against the law to use it for our dairy farm.
And for those playing at home, livestock is a major part of agriculture in Utah. So finally, it all comes down to the age-old foe, money.
Why do you think we've seen so little workers coming across to work on farms?
Well, there are a few people here in the ranches. Most of them leave because, for example, in construction, they pay $20 to $22, In ranch, they pay up to $16, and it is logical for like any person, right? They will go where they earn more money, because despite that, they come with some very expensive bills.
A problem for farmers is a problem for consumers. It doesn't matter how good of a crop is growing. If there isn't the labour to harvest it all, that leaves a hole in the market.
We've got to come to a resolution in Washington to where we understand the value of local food production. Or if not, you simply are just going to see your dairy products, all your proteins coming from other parts of the world. I just drove around my farm today, and I feel like we're just swamped and we're behind. I mean, and I feel like we could use 20 more guys today.
All right, and joining us in the studio, Hugo Ricard Bell. Great piece and a great bit of work. I know that was a deep dive, a big bite and a long chew, as we like to say. So as you look at that, obviously this is a complicated issue, but one of the things that jumped out is just at the end there, it's kind of a dollars and cents issue as well.
Yeah, so what was interesting about that, though, is there are two different perspectives from employers and then the workers. So obviously, like Baltazar said, in farm work, you get $16 an hour, say. In construction, you get $20 to $25 in some cases. But it costs the farmers to employ them $25 because that extra, I think, $7 to $10 that they aren't getting is going into they get accommodation and food and that sort of thing added on.
Yeah.
And there's also a different sort of mindset into the different labourers, construction workers who come across the border. Often they'll come across in groups of 5 to 6. They'll all rent one house for very cheap sort of rent, and then they'll, so more money goes a longer way, I guess.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. I know you also, in the process of doing this story, Hugo, you had an opportunity to sit down with Governor Spencer Cox. A lot of questions, a lot of complicated pieces of the puzzle. What was your takeaway from sitting down with the governor?
Well, I think this is no surprise to you, Boyd, but my first takeaway was he is pretty disgruntled with Congress. They're taking their sweet time on this sort of issue. But he also spoke of, wanting the immigration policies and stuff to be run by on a state level. We've spoken about this before, federalism.
Yeah.
But he really spoke about, apparently Utah's had a immigration reform plan that they wrote 10 years ago.
Right.
And both the Obama and the Trump administration didn't let them sort of put it into action. So he would like to get together with all the industry heads in the state, figure out where the unemployment issues are, how many visas are needed here, there and everywhere, and allocate them appropriately. That was his sort of main goal to sort of solve this problem.
Yeah. And then finally, just real quickly, Hugo, as you take this in its entirety, your conversations with people around the state, those in the industry, those that are the workers, and the governor, anything else kind of under the surface that we're not thinking about that we should be thinking about?
I found it interesting that the governor sort of pointed to the fact that this is actually one issue that most Republicans and Democrats actually agree on. So it's interesting that it's taking such a long time to sort of help out.
Yeah, great insight, great reporting. Hugo Ricard Bell from KSL News Radio joining us on this important issue around migrant labor shortage and how they're actually impacting us in a negative way here in the state of Utah. And Hugo put it perfectly. This is one of those things where Democrats and Republicans alike agree on so many pieces of the puzzle, and yet it seems that for the politics of it all, no one actually wants to sit down and do the policy that will meet the labor needs that we actually have in the state and around the country. Hugo, thanks again for joining us today.
No worries. Thank you, Boyd.
All right, we'll go ahead and step aside for a quick break. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll have none other than Bruce Huff, a candidate for the 2nd congressional seat, will be joining us live in studio here on Inside Sources. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Removing the Bible may be just the beginning.
When the legislature passes a law to preclude certain conduct, sometimes it catches things that they never intended to catch.
In a case of unintended consequences.
This is actually something the majority of parents don't want to see.
Reporter Amy Kobabe goes cover to cover on the story. Battle of the Books, this week on KSL News Radio.
This is Jeff Stout with Fink and McGregor Mortgages Made Simple. FHA has announced a significant reduction in mortgage insurance rates. This can be a game changer for some people. FHA rates are typically lower than conventional mortgage rates. Combine this with lower mortgage insurance and FHA is worth a look. FHA is especially attractive for low down payment, cash out, or credit issues. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer, and you can refinance into or out of an FHA loan. Another attractive feature of an FHA loan is the ability to streamline refinance when rates come down. No appraisal needed, limited documentation, and low cost helps you lower your payment with minimal fuss. Call us today. Fink and McGregor, Mortgages Made Simple, 801-264-9494. That's 264-9494. Or on the web at finkmcgregor.com. NMLS 289115.
Gentle with the nail trimmers. You mustn't nip the quick.
Short-staffed, Marco needs to fetch some help now.
The poodle has to look like a bear. Scruffy to fluffy.
He needs a groomer that will be the bark of the town.
Please hold. Has anyone groomed a chinchilla before?
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. We instantly connect you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
At SimpliSafe, we know during a break-in, every second counts. So our home security system is powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who use Fast Protect technology, only from SimpliSafe, to capture video evidence and verify a threat for fast police response. Now, install SimpliSafe your way. Do it yourself or have an expert set it up for you with new Pro Install. Get 20% off any new system with Fast Protect monitoring at simplisafe.com/radio. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Take a break from financial worries. Meet the Mountain America debt consolidation expert for a chance to win a vacation package. Details at macu.com/debt rescue.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio is your window to the outside world, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio, or listen on the KSL News Radio app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
Register for breaking news updates by texting the word news to the Cypress Credit Union KSL text line at 57500.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the Cache Valley Mall has been in decline for several years. Now it could be replaced with new residential and retail development in Logan. Second, you'll be able to watch Utah Jazz games this season without paying for cable. And third, a $3 billion accounting mistake at the Pentagon means the United States could send more weapons to Ukraine. Right now, 63 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, if you haven't heard, I don't know where you've been. Utah's having a special election this coming November to take the place of the second congressional seat. Sometimes we mistakenly call that a certain person's seat, but it's not. Chris Stewart is retiring, stepping away from the House, and so the second congressional seat will be open. And the voters of the second congressional district will have some decisions to make. And after his announcement that he's stepping down, of course, we've gone through some of the things, the hoops and hurdles that the governor and the legislature have had to do to get this thing all rolling forward. And now it is rolling forward at a very rapid clip. And we're very excited to have joining us in the studio today Bruce Huff, of course, National Committeeman of the Republican Party for Utah. He's also the president of Nutraceutical, a health products and nutritional supplement manufacturing firm. And Bruce, you and I have had a lot of conversations over the years about all things politics and how this is could be done, should be done. And now you're getting into the middle of it. To tell us why this race, why now?
It's really interesting, Boyd, because, and let me just do a quick correction. Nutraceutical is now called the Better Being Company, and we sold that a few years back. And which means I have more time.
You have more time.
I have more time.
There's one answer to the question.
Which is one of the answers to the question. And I actually just resigned as the national committee man so that I could run for this position.
I knew you would have to do that. I didn't know if you'd pull the trigger on that.
So absolutely. Listen, it's been interesting because I have for almost 40 years, first as the chairman of the Republican Party here and as a national committee man, I have been the guy encouraging and recruiting and supporting candidates for public office. Yeah. I'm the one who says, hey, you need to be the person in the arena, right? You need to get in. You're of good character and standing, and you're intelligent, and you have ideas. And so for 40 years, that's what I've been doing. Yeah. And it's been interesting because for years, people have said, when are you going to do it? Because you really need to do this. And I've always said, hey, I've got other stuff I'm doing. It's called life.
Yeah.
Whether it's, ecclesiastical or whether it's, it's business or it's family or whatever it happens to be. They're all sort of there's things and times and seasons in your life. This obviously came totally unexpected because no one understood that Chris would be in this situation, Congressman Stewart, who was a great friend and has been, I think, a wonderful congressman, someone we can be proud of, who was principled, who stood for what he believed. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything.
Right.
But the idea that he was pretty steadfast, I think, in his belief system, and you knew where he stood. And that's a tremendous thing. Yeah. So my wife and I had this discussion. Actually, my phone blew up at lunch, and I'm looking at it, and people were saying, are you getting in? I have no idea what they're talking about. And finally, I find out, that there's this situation with Congressman Stewart. So we sort of looked at each other, and we talked about it. And when my wife is of the opinion that this actually might be your time, then I have to think seriously about it.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what happened. And look, I think I bring something different. I'm not a politician. I'm a business guy. I'm looking at what's going on in this country, and I've seen it for years and years, and I've been concerned about it. And I think this is a time where I think I have maybe some unique skills to apply into that system, some things that would help us move us forward a little bit. Yeah. And I say a little bit because, look, we're not, until we have 60 senators of any ilk, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to have a balanced budget amendment. But there's a lot of things we can do incrementally. The inches, it's a game of inches.
Yeah.
And to do the hyperbole of, we have to get this much every time, or we have to win this war, just isn't realistic in the current makeup of the Congress. So what we really have to do is say, let's focus on the things that we can get done, and not worry so much about what is, great press or great media, because that doesn't move the needle forward.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously this is a compressed time frame.
Wow,
in terms of
is
this,
it
like
ever?
Rapid. This is like speed dating on steroids, looking at candidates.
Speed politicking.
And so as you look at that, as you look at the message to delegates in the Republican Party, primary voters, moving beyond that, what is the essence of your message? Like when people are getting ready to cast that vote, what is it that you want them thinking about as it relates to Bruce Huff?
What I want them to think about is who is the adult in the room? Who's going to actually have the willingness to listen, to understand, disagree, and to have what I call respectful but productive conflict? Because I really think that it's not always my idea or their idea. It's our idea once we get into the constructive, productive, but respectful conflict. We come up with a better solution. I have to say that I have yearned for the days of an Orrin Hatch when he could sit down with a Ted Kennedy and they could hammer out something. They would disagree, and then after a certain time and effort, they would find ways that they could move the needle forward. Yeah. And I think that's a good model, and I think demonstrates this can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now I have to ask you the question that I ask every candidate for every office. And I've asked this of people at the city council level, mayor's race, all the way to people running for president of the United States.
Should have done my homework. Okay.
Here is the question. We all know campaigns are brutal and challenging, even on a compressed schedule. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of heartache and headache and all of the other things. And so the question is, we know everyone's running to win. You expect to win to make that happen. What is it that would make all of that headache and work and effort worth it, even if you got to Election Day and still came up short? What would make that effort and that journey worthwhile?
Well, actually, Boyd, I have answered that question. I wrote a campaign manifesto, and for my staff, the people who are working on the campaign, anyone who's going to be involved with my campaign, I said, here are the things that I believe we must do, not just to win, but to win and to operate in a way that is going to provide the right result. One of the things is we're committed to win. But I put at the very end, I said, should we not prevail, then we should leave this campaign knowing that we did all we could do and that we have left it better, that we have engaged in a conversation that the voters are better informed, that they feel better about my having been a part of the campaign, that I added something to it, that I was positive, and that our campaign people who would be devastated if we lost would be also feeling like, you know what, we did all we could, and we came out better people because of it. And so that's the end game is, if we were not successful, are we better for it, and is the public better for us having been in the race? And if that's the case, then we can say with grace that we did all we could do, but there are certain things outside of our control, and there is grace and wisdom and understanding that there are, and that we can accept that.
Fantastic. I'm going to give you just one more extra minute here, Bruce, because we've got a second. What's the one thing that you wish we were talking about in this campaign, truncated as it is? What is the one thing we should be talking about that nobody's talking about?
What we should be talking about is what I think about every day, my 22 grandchildren. And it is simply, what kind of future are we going to provide for them? What are we doing right now, today, to make sure that their futures are secure? Not guaranteed in terms of outcomes, in terms of what they will accomplish, but that the government isn't burdening them so much and creating so many obstacles that they actually have the ability to, through their choices and through their merit, to accomplish that American dream that really began these many hundreds of years ago.
Fantastic. Bruce Huff is a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, this open seat special election coming up. Things will be fast and furious over the next couple of weeks, moving towards a convention. And then signatures have got to be in by July the 5th, and then we'll move on to primary and into a general election. And Bruce, we appreciate your service to the state as a national committeeman, and now we can say former, which I'm sure there were many at the national level that groaned and moaned slightly at that.
I was asked the question, you think this is a step up?
Always a good question coming from the national folks, to be sure. But Bruce Huff, and again, we're going through all of the candidates across all of the platforms and the shows here on KSL News Radio with 22 candidates in the race. It's a lot of ground to cover, but Bruce, we appreciate you making the effort to be in studio with us.
Good to be back at KSL.
Yeah, and it's great to have you in studio here today. So again, we're going to continue to monitor all things happening in Utah's 2nd Congressional District. The people of the 2nd Congressional District will decide, and that is the 2nd Congressional Citizens seat. And that's an important part of that conversation, and we're going to make sure we get to the essence of what that role means, what it can do, and what it comes next in terms of Utah's influence on the nation, not just the nation's influence on Utah. And again, very grateful to have Bruce Huff in studio with us here on KSL News Radio. All right, we'll go ahead and step aside. That wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Top of the hour news is coming up. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll have a think again moment on what you're not hearing from candidates in the presidential race. Stick around. More Inside Sources coming up next.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. There are more than a dozen Republican candidates in the race to replace Congressman Chris Stewart when he steps down in September. Stewart, though, himself is endorsing a member of his staff, Celeste Malloy. She's served as chief counsel in his office. In a news release, Stewart calls her a strong conservative woman with Utah values. A new bill working its way through Congress would allow disabled passengers to sit in their own wheelchairs on airplanes. KSL News Radio's Heather Kelly has more on the push to grant more accessibility on flights.
Almost 900 wheelchairs and scooters were damaged by airline personnel in January of this year alone. That is just one reason accessibility advocates tell the news website Axios they want Congress to approve the FAA reauthorization bill. They say researchers found it is completely feasible for users to remain in their chairs on flights.
Airline insiders say carriers would lose money if they had to remove standard seats to accommodate wheelchairs. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The CEO of OceanGate, the company that took tourists to the wreck of the Titanic, is one of the 5 people aboard the submersible that's now missing in the North Atlantic. ABC's Luis Martinez says crews are using a remote submersible in the search now.
What they're using right now is an ROV from a commercial vessel, not from the U.S. Navy or from the Coast Guard. This is from a commercial vessel that happened to be in the area. But there are also limitations on the depths to which it can go. But it shows you that they're trying to figure out exactly where the submersible may be. Is it at the bottom of the ocean right now? Is it potentially somewhere in an area where it could rise up?
The company says their submersible is designed to come back to the surface on its own if anything goes wrong. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down 245 points as we approach the end of the trading day. NASDAQ down 22 points right now. And coming up, it looks like our weather is going to clear up and warm up. That's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
People running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Register for breaking news updates by texting the word news to the Cyprus Credit Union KSL text line at 57500.
With the economy the way it is, you're probably staying put. So invest in your home, your number one asset, with beautiful custom replacement windows from Advanced Window Products. They're a local Utah company building beautiful vinyl framed and insulated double pane windows for 37 years right here in Salt Lake City. Advanced Window Products will save you money on your energy bill. Get security features to keep your family safe. And at Advanced Window Products, it's all custom. And the best part, they're local. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. You save on the highest quality windows in Utah. Plus, Rocky Mountain and Dominion offer rebates. For a limited time, they offer 60-month 0% financing. And right now, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more. They're working 8 weeks out. So make the call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100 or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
I lost 34 pounds on the Soda weight loss system, and I did it like a year and a half ago now. Has it been that long?
It has.
Oh, my gosh. It seems like yesterday because it was so simple. I know you think of weight loss, especially losing 34 pounds or more, as being just an incredibly difficult thing. And it has been at other times in my life, but not with Soda. With Soda, I just did what they told me. I can follow directions. Eat this then. Okay. I did that. And in 3 months, I lost the weight, and now it's been over a year and a half, and I've kept it off.
I was just thinking how rare it is that somebody would say, I lost a certain number of pounds a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
That's unheard of for many people because they'll lose the weight and then they gain it back. Plus, they usually put on a few pounds over and above that. My daughter lost 42 pounds and she's still down.
thanks to the great people at Soda Weight Loss. No pills, no counting calories, no appetite suppressants. Let this program work for you or somebody in your family. Go to sodaweightloss.com, spelled SOTA. Think Tim and Amanda. It is state-of-the-art.
Get Mr. Max Performance Missionary Package. 1 performance suit, 4 and collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, and 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes. Just $595.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's High Yield Savings Certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have a little bit of an unusual situation on I-215's West Belt. We have a crash that occurred on the northbound side, but you will have left lanes blocked both directions. This is just below the I-80 junction, anywhere between North Temple and 5th South. Delays are possible where we have a crash involving a big motorhome that actually went into the barrier. Again, left lanes blocked both directions. Time to replace your roof? Intermountain West Contractors can finish most roofs in one day. Use Radio 1000 and get $1,000 off a roof replacement now. IWCroofing.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. Winds die down today. It'll be partly cloudy with a high around 73, and then warm up through the rest of the week. And right now, 63 degrees, partly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Former President Donald Trump is proving once again that he excels at becoming the focal point, grabbing headlines, capturing the airwaves when it comes to getting attention for a presidential run. His actions and controversies have sucked up a lot of the oxygen in the room on a regular basis, much to the detriment and chagrin of many of the other GOP candidates who are vying for the nomination. We saw that happen over the weekend with an interview on Fox News. And interestingly, a lot of the other candidates had to answer questions about the former president's interview rather than getting to their own message. So the think again moment is, what are we missing chasing the headlines of the former president? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is always interesting. Of course, yesterday, the former president sat down with Bret Baier from Fox News. They had a very vigorous and sometimes contentious conversation about a wide range of things, from indictments and documents to what happened in the Oval Office and to what comes next. And the interesting thing to me is that all of the other candidates running for the highest office in the land are regularly not asked about their ideas or their policies or their principles, but about the former president. That obviously has to be a challenge for all of those candidates. And so we wanted to just get a little bit between the smoke and the confusion and the chatter and the clamor that's out there in this presidential race on the Republican side, and look at some of the things that we're missing as it relates to real principle and policy discussions. So in a recent interview, Nikki Haley gave her stance towards our relationship with China in contrast to the Biden administration.
It's so naive by the administration. I mean, first you look at Janet Yellen saying she wants to, have more economic ties with China. You've got Blinken and Biden basically saying the spy balloon was a mistake. China is making it very clear they're at war with America. And the Biden administration is making it very clear that he has no clue that that's what they're trying to do.
Tim Scott was attempting to draw energy and awareness about the progress he's making in his campaign.
The one thing I will say is, as I continue to campaign in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, our voters, primary voters, are starving for a message filled with optimism, hope, anchored in conservative values with a backbone. My numbers continue to climb where I am campaigning. That is good news. We've moved to third place in the polls in Iowa and recently third place in New Hampshire as well. People are responding incredibly positive to the message of hope and opportunity as long as we talk about it from a conservative perspective. I'm the most conservative person in the race for president.
Really interesting in connection with Senator Tim Scott. Last week, another former president, President Barack Obama went after Tim Scott in an interview, saying that people should be skeptical of a candidate of color who doesn't have a clear plan to address systemic racism in America. Senator Scott took some umbrage with that, and he had this to say about the former president, President Obama's comments.
The one thing I will say is, as I continue to campaign in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, our voters, primary voters, are starving for a message filled with optimism, hope, anchored in conservative values with a backbone. My numbers continue to climb where I am campaigning. That is good news. We've moved to third place in the polls in Iowa and recently third place in New Hampshire as well. People are responding incredibly positive to the message of hope and opportunity as long as we talk about it from a conservative perspective. I'm the most conservative person in the race for president.
So Senator Scott went on to say that the former president had missed the mark. And that the one thing that those on the left of the aisle didn't want was a black person to be a conservative. And Senator Scott concluded by saying America can come together, not because of skin color, but because of a consistent commitment to a value system that founded the nation. Now, this past Sunday, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie was on CBS Face the Nation trying to get his message out. He talked about his progress against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in early campaign states.
I don't know Governor DeSantis all that well. I trust I'll get to know him much better over the course of this campaign. But I'll say this. People can see this if they go to our website. They'll see that in the last two polls in New Hampshire, we are now solidly in third place after 1 week in the race and only 4 points behind Governor DeSantis, who's in second place. So this is a race to be the Trump alternative.
So very interesting on the Republican side. Again, everyone trying to break through. All the candidates still having to answer questions about the former president and his campaign, where he is and what's happening and swirling around his world. And so that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. And will those other candidates, will they be able to drive their own message, or will they spend the bulk of their time running for office answering questions about another candidate? That's always an interesting thing. And it's a hard thing for a candidate to get back on message when no one's asking you about your campaign. You're always being asked about someone else's. But it does show you the power of a former president in the race and what he's able to do in terms of commandeering airtime, TV time, and space between a lot of people's ears on both the left and the right. Now, let's continue on some other things that were happening over the weekend that you may not have heard amidst all the other noise and chatter that was going on. On Saturday, the current president, Joe Biden, held a campaign rally in Philadelphia. This was really a big step out for the Biden campaign. They've been pretty quiet over the last 4 weeks, so this was an important step in amping up and ramping up the campaign for the president. He was talking a lot about his accomplishments in the administration. He had a very friendly crowd in terms of a union gathering. And here's him describing the infrastructure bill that he got passed.
Next, we passed the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's about investing in America, in our roads, bridges, ports, airports, clean water, high-speed internet, and so much more. We've already started some 32,000 projects all across America. None more consequential than right here in I-95 in Philly. In fact, if you go to invest.gov, you'll see a map that's going to show every single project in this country. And by the way, it creates tens of thousands of good-paying jobs.
Former Vice President Mike Pence also out on the campaign stump as well, trying to get a breakthrough message there. But again, all of these candidates perpetually asked about the former president. And one of the interesting ones, I think, is Vivek Ramaswamy, who actually went on the offensive as it related to the former president, not to talk about what he had or had not done, but to talk about the coverage about what has or has not been done. And that's where the real questions need to be asked. One final thought from President Biden's speech over the weekend. He did get into some pretty interesting territory, both in the fact that he really went to the grievance message, which was so interesting to me, that President Biden, he touted his victories, some of the things he had done well. He talked way too long. And then he got into this whole grievance thing that actually sounded a lot more like former President Trump than it did current President Biden. President Biden actually told the union workers that the Republicans were coming after your job. And so very much that populist grievance message. And then the president actually rounded out his day. This was on Friday with a very interesting mic drop by saying, "God save the Queen, man," which was an interesting way to end, and had a few people scratching their heads in terms of where was he going with that line. But that happens on campaign stops. That happens on the campaign trail. And that's why we're going to stick with it and continue to follow these conversations and look at the areas where candidates are doing well, where they seem to be connecting with voters, and where they are simply missing the mark. Because it's time for a different kind of conversation in the country. And I actually believe that beyond the noise and the loud stuff, I actually think there is a conversation to be had with the American people. The question is, who will have it, and who will have it in a way that the American people will respond.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Right on cue for summer.
OPEC plans to cut oil production.
Gas prices are headed up.
But people say they are not calling off their trips.
Whether you're planning a staycation or a day trip, start your summer here. Get updates on traffic out of town, gas prices, and everything you need to know. Listen each day this summer, mornings and afternoons, to KSL News Radio.
Well, you've heard me say it before. After all is said and done, much more is said than is ever done. And in no place is that more real than in getting healthy. Many people talk about losing weight. Many people talk about programs and systems, but they rarely do anything that actually works and sticks. My journey with SOTA Weight Loss has been about producing actual results. I lost over 37 pounds in just 90 days. I'm well over a year and a half into this, and I'm still right there. I feel better. I'm healthier. I'm stronger than ever before. No potions, no lotions, no counting, nothing to do. Follow the simple instructions and learn to do it different. SOTA Weight Loss, SOTA, stands for state-of-the-art weight loss because it is state-of-the-art. The pounds and inches go away. More importantly, you get healthy, strong, because you're taking action and changing the game. So as I always say, there's no time to lose when it comes to your SOTA weight loss journey, so start today. Check it out at sotaweightloss.com, SOTAweightloss.com.
Quarters, just 25 cents. That's hardly anything, right? The retirement specialists at Capital Wealth Advisors see quarters a little differently. A quarter is a lot when it's a quarter of your retirement savings. Do you want to pay 25% or more in taxes during your retirement? Capital Wealth Advisors can create a plan to help address taxes in retirement. If the only time you think about taxes is when you file them, you do not have a tax strategy. But it's not too late to get one with the help from Capital Wealth Advisors. Act now to make sure you're not paying a quarter, dime, or even a penny more than you should. Call the team at Capital Wealth Advisors at 801-210-5500 to schedule your complimentary retirement tax analysis. A quarter saved is a quarter earned. Call 801-210-5500 now. That's 801-210-5500. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor.
The biggest RV show in the region is growing. The Utah Summer RV Palooza is back and bringing the heat to Sandy, June 22nd through the 24th. For 3 days only, the shops at Southtown will be packed with the largest selection of new and used RVs in the region. Shop brands like Ember, Forest River, Northwood, and more. You'll even find the hard-to-get Go Play 26BH bunkhouse travel trailer at a sales price of only $19,995. But that's not all the summer savings we're serving up. Save up to 20% below cost on select new 2022 RVs. Yeah, up to 20% under cost. We're also offering 90 days no payments on approved credit for all play and no pay until September. Plus, right now, we'll trade anything. Bring your trade to the show and we'll hook you up. Don't miss your chance to enter to win a brand new $30,000 RV. No purchase necessary. See rules for details. All during the Utah Summer RV Palooza in Sandy. Only June 22nd through the 24th at the shops at Southtown. Sponsored by Vicious RV.
If you've got a honey-do list with electrical, plumbing, heating, or air conditioning projects on it, Any Hour Services can help. Call Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. anyhourservices.com.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm blessed that KSL has given me the freedom to talk about whatever I want. Literally, it is my minute of news. It might be something bizarre that you didn't know. Sometimes it's pegged to what's happening that very day.
Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Congressman Chris Stewart is endorsing a member of his own staff as the candidate to replace him after he leaves the House of Representatives. Second, wind and warmer weather are increasing the risk of wildfire in Utah. Third, the CEO of the company that takes tourists to the wreckage of the Titanic is among the 5 people aboard their missing submersible in the North Atlantic. Right now, 63 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Well, today is World Refugee Day. A recent UN report found that a record 110 million people have been displaced worldwide. 110 million people displaced worldwide, with a total of about 35 million refugees. We'll talk about the difference between those that have been displaced internally within their own country, those who are seeking refugee other places. Of course, Utah has been a place where many refugees have been able to settle. And so on this day, as we look at what we can do and how we can go about it, we're really thrilled to have back on the program Holly Richardson, the editor of Utah Policy and a columnist for the Deseret News. And Holly, you're someone who gets refugee work in a very personal way, as you've traveled around the world in an effort to make a difference that we always talk about on this show. And so as you ponder and reflect on World Refugee Day, what are some of the things that instantly jump out from what you've seen and experienced and what you've heard from refugees you've interacted with?
Thanks, first of all, for having me. But I think one of the things that jumps out to me the most this year is the huge increase in number of refugees. We went up by almost 20 million. And last year was an all-time high, and the year before that was an all-time high. And so you can imagine it's another 23% jump this year. We have 108 million. And those people are all real people, right? Those great big numbers make it really hard sometimes to drill down and say, well, it really is this one person that I met in a Greek refugee camp who was having his hair fall out from stress because he wanted to work, but the laws prevented him from working, right? But he left Aleppo, Syria, because the bombs were keeping his children awake at night. I mean, what kind of choices are these? They're very, very difficult.
Yeah, so it's hard even to wrap your head around it. And I'm glad you started with the numbers, because sometimes I think we get lost in the numbers because they are so big. You had in your piece at Deseret.com talking about the fact that 1 in every 74 people on the planet have been forced to leave their home. That is mind-boggling to me.
It is mind-boggling. And, when I first started writing about refugees, the number was still very high, but it was more like 1 in 120, and then it was approaching 1 in 110, and now it's 1 in 74. And what that means is that in basically a relatively small neighborhood, you're going to have at least one person who's been forced out of their home, right? If you get a conglomeration of 74 people together. And refugee doesn't always mean that they've left the country. There's a lot of people who are internally displaced. So they've been forced out of their home, but they haven't left their country. So you can think about Ukrainian refugees. They've left the areas where the conflict is more hot and volatile, and they've gone to areas of relative peace, but they still had to leave their home.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, another one that we often get lost, of how many in Turkey, in Syria, in Ukraine are displaced inside their countries, but still kind of on the move and nothing really stable. One of the things that you mentioned in your piece, Holly, that I think is so important for us to zero in on, and that is that it is such a complicated process here in the United States to get that refugee status. It's a lot of hoops. It's a lot of hurdles.
It is. It's a lot of hoops. So there's at least 26 different steps to passing, I guess, the gauntlet. They don't call it that. That's my word for it. But to get through the security screening process to come to the United States as a refugee. The state of Utah has information on all the steps that refugees have to go through, but one of the things that they point out is that refugees have more screening than any other entrants into the United States. So I think sometimes people conflate refugees with every other type of migrant, and they're not the same. They don't go through the same process. They don't get here the same way. And today on World Refugee Day, right? I mean, I think the fact that Utah took in 1,400 refugees last year is great. But wow, would I like to see that number go up.
Yeah, and let's take a look at one of those things that we can do to make a difference. That's what it's always all about. How do we do better? How can we impact more? How can we make a difference for one? We may not be able to get to all of them, but we can certainly make a difference for one today. What are some of the things we should be thinking about in that conversation?
Well, look, I just went to the World Refugee Celebration. It's a World Refugee Day celebration in Midvale over the weekend, and there were hundreds of people there, lots of organizations, and they were looking for volunteers. So it can be Lifting Hands International that helps get stuff that people need for their first apartment, for example, in Utah. So think bedding and dishes and pots and pans and those types of things. So they're looking for specific donations. The Utah Refugee Connection is a really great resource, and they do a lot with backpacks. In fact, this summer they're going to do a backpack drive so that kids who are refugee kids can go back to school and feel like at least they fit in with their peers and that they have a backpack with school supplies. All of those types of organizations, the International Rescue Committee, the Utah Refugee Services offices through the state of Utah, all of them are looking for volunteers. And it can be everything from, hey, can you hang out with, or can you come work with this Boy Scout troop that's working with refugees, or can you mentor this family as they're trying to navigate the educational system in the United States, right? So from that to just saying, hey, we really need a twin mattress. Can you help us find a twin mattress?
Yeah, and all of those are things that we all can do. It's one of the things I love about my neighborhood and community. I've seen this for refugee families, and they needed, a refrigerator and it's there, or a television for the kids, or clothing, or job help, or even just babysitting the kids so the parents could go to English class, and all of those things. That's I think are hallmarks of what we do here in Utah in particular, and that we can do more. And one last thing, Holly, before I let you go, what's the thing relating to refugees that we aren't talking enough about that might help change the dynamic and improve those lives of those refugees?
There's a poem by a refugee who, a section of the poem says, they would not leave in the mouth of a shark, right, unless staying behind was worse. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's the idea, if you can put yourself in a situation where your choice is between death if you stay and maybe life if you leave, then I think that helps our hearts expand and understand why people make this choice. They don't necessarily want to leave their home. Many of them are homesick, but we need to talk about the circumstances in the world that are forcing 1 in 74 people out of their homes. That's not okay.
Yeah, and I think it's so important as we bring those refugees into our communities that we recognize that they are not liabilities to be managed. These are human beings who will add richness and depth to our neighborhoods and our communities in big ways.
Yep, they are.
Yeah, great stuff. Holly, always appreciate you joining us on the show. Dr. Holly Richardson, of course, is the editor of Utah Policy and a columnist for the Deseret News. You can check out her piece on World Refugee Day at Deseret.com. And Holly, as always, we appreciate you joining the show.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Boyd.
All righty, and that's Dr. Holly Richardson. And again, I think we do this pretty well in this state, and I think we can do better, as Holly said. I think there are a lot of opportunities out there that if we just leaned in just a little bit more, if we were just a little bit more aware. One of the things in Holly's piece that you can check out at Deseret.com, there is a great listing there of all the opportunities and all of the places that you can look to say, hey, I can volunteer here, I can help out this way, I can do this or that, and it makes a difference for everybody. And I can tell you, when you engage with a refugee family, you will never look at your freedom, the comforts that you enjoy, the opportunities you've been given. You'll never see them quite the same way again. There is something about what is inscribed on that lady with the statue, the lady with the lamp in the harbor, about those huddled masses yearning to be free. That yearning to be free is the ultimate driving force for so many of these who come to the United States as refugees, and they deserve the very best of what we are here in America and here in the state of Utah. All right, we're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. When we come back, former Colorado United States Senator Cory Gardner is going to join us, talk about some of the things that are happening in relationship to conservation and also his interaction on some political fronts on the national stage. We'll talk about that, have that conversation coming up next on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio.
Asked what kind of family she wanted. She said, a family like yours.
Learn more about adopting a teen at adoptuskids.org. You can't imagine the reward. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Jessica Lowell. KSL's top story this hour. Winds across the state are increasing fire danger and drying out the environment. Fire prevention specialist Paula Emily says the wind is a huge deterring factor during fire season.
They can order aircraft to dump the retardant on it, but then again, you got to figure that aircraft's up in the air and dumping the retardant, the wind is just going to take that retardant and blow it not where they want it. So the wind really determines a lot of the fire behavior.
Emily says we've had a slow start to fire season this year thanks to all of our moisture, but with the winds drying out the environment, it could pick up very soon. Utah Jazz fans will get to watch games for free on TV this season. The team has a new deal with the owners of KJZZ Channel 14 to broadcast the games. Back in March, Jazz owner Ryan Smith told Hans and Scotty G with KSL Sports that they hope to reach more fans than they did on cable.
I think our partnership with AT&T has been great. But at the same time, like being able to provide our games to 30, 40, 50% of the possible fans in the state is not ideal for anyone.
The Jazz will also have a paid streaming service available on the team website for fans who want to watch games online. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. An international effort is underway to find and rescue 5 people aboard a submersive missing in the North Atlantic. U.S. Coast Guard Captain Jamie Frederick.
Yesterday, we stood up a unified command consisting of expertise from the United States Coast Guard, the United States Navy, Canadian Armed Forces and Coast Guard, and the Titan's parent company, OceanGate Expedition.
The CEO of OceanGate is the company that takes the tourists... The CEO of OceanGate, the company that takes tourists down to the wreckage of the Titanic, is among the 5 on board. Your money at this moment, it was a down day on Wall Street. Dow was down 245 points, the S&P lost 20, and the NASDAQ down 22. Coming up, it's cooler today, but warmer weather in the forecast. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 2:33.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Wouldn't it be great if life came with a remote control? You know, you could hit pause when you needed to, or hit rewind, like that time you knocked down that wasp's nest.
Uh-oh.
Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. To learn your risk, take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Eva's wedding.
Nana's 80th.
My first interview.
Whenever I'm on the road, I wonder, where's everyone going? Every truck, bus, car, or bike, we all share the goal of going somewhere special beyond where we're driving to. So, let's work together to make sure we all get there safely. Visit www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. Paid for by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration.
Introducing Yes, Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Call the pros at Yes and save up to $1,000 on select new energy-efficient HVAC systems. Plus, you get a free whole home air purification system to help reduce harmful airborne contaminants in your home. The same great people providing the same great service that Utah has counted on for more than 45 years. Visit theyesmancan.com to schedule your appointment.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, presto, you're starting to speak another language, like magic.
I love that Babbel's lessons aren't just robots talking. They're voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right.
If you want to learn a language, there's no faster, easier, better way than
Babbel.
Babbel.
Babbel. Go to babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com. Babbel.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's High Yield Savings Certificate. Here's Ricky Neese.
Yep, continues on the crash northbound I-215's West Belt, right about the North Temple area. It is still over to the left, but you can get by without any kind of problem. Take a break from financial worries. Meet with a Mountain America debt consolidation expert for a chance to win a vacation package. Details at macu.com/debt rescue. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, winds will die down today. Partly cloudy with a high around 73, warming up through the rest of the week. Right now it's 66 degrees at KSL News Radio 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We're really thrilled to have joining us on the program Cory Gardner, of course, former senator from Colorado and one of the great members of the United States Senate. Did some extraordinary work back there, not just for Colorado, but for the entire country. Someone who is a happy warrior, someone who is focused on the good of the country, and someone we need a lot more of these kinds of voices. And Senator Gardner, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
So you were part of a great event last week here in Utah as a group of Utah delegation and yourself and a host of others came together with the American Conservation Coalition and really having important conversations about stewardship, about the land, and doing it in a slightly different way.
Well, it's always great to be in Utah and Salt Lake City, our neighbor. And I teased them a little bit about the snow in Utah. We both had great snow years. And so I said, next time you have a summit, come to Colorado. But look, the American Conservation Coalition is doing such great work. They had about 400 people attend. And you're right, members of the Utah delegation, members of the Congressional Western Caucus, the House of Representatives from California, across the country were there talking about how to achieve a cleaner tomorrow without big government and big brother coming in to do it for us.
Yeah, and so often we get lost in this conversation, and the extreme components, come in, and it just doesn't even sound like it's in the realm of reality. And so often it's that people. You experienced this when you were in the Senate. That a lot of people on the East Coast think they know what to do to be good stewards of the land out here in the West when they haven't even visited here or they don't even show up for the committee hearings.
It's a great point, Boyd. And one of the things that I found interesting when over the last couple of weeks, we've seen the East Coast suffocating under this cloud of smoke from forest fires in Canada. Well, you know what? That's something that in Utah and Colorado, unfortunately, we have been dealing with many, many summers. But now all of a sudden they realize that our forest management needs to be reviewed. And that's something that we've been saying all along. And so you're right. When people all of a sudden start seeing the things that we've been living with, like poor forest management practices, maybe it'll make a difference in how we can move forward. And the ACC, American Conservation Coalition conversation can be a huge part of this discussion nationwide on that and many other issues.
Yeah, and you had a big group of young people who are interested in the environment and climate and the future because it's going to be theirs, and they're leaning into it in a pretty interesting way.
That's right. It's funny. I made the joke on the stage when I was giving my comments that my favorite part of the United States Senate was hip replacement Wednesdays because I think I was 30 or 40 years younger than the average senator. Of course, Mike Lee is young as well compared to the rest of them. But looking out at that crowd, you're right. It is a different crowd than you're used to seeing at a political rally or a caucus meeting or event. And these are voters who are believe in the free market. They believe in achieving through innovation, not government dictates and mandates, solutions to our climate and environmental concerns. But man, it's nice to see young voters take an active interest in it.
It is, and that's an important part of that crucial conversation. I think that was a great event and some great looking in terms of the principles and policies that I think can get us to a better place. And so often it is the ranchers and the people who are working in the forest who really want to conserve and who are, I think Representative Curtis often calls them to their chagrin, the greatest environmentalists on the planet because they love the land and they profit from it and they want to preserve it. And I think it's an important part of that conversation. Well, I want to shift the gears, moving to the real future. And obviously 2024 is coming, and we're looking at all of the things that are happening. And since you've left the Senate, of course, you've been quite busy, and you've got even busier in the last little bit with the Opportunity Matters Fund action, looking at a super PAC there. Tell us about that. And, of course, Senator Tim Scott, who is now in the race. Talk about this Opportunity Matters Fund.
Well, I've had a great honor of working with Senator Tim Scott for over a decade now. I was elected to the House of Representatives with him in 2010, that great wave that took Nancy Pelosi away from the speakership that first time. And I remember telling him after working with him for a couple of years on his solutions that, Ben, I hope you're interested in running for president someday. And if you do, let me know how I can help. And, 12 years later, here I am. Here Tim is running for president, and I'm excited about it. And for those who haven't had the chance to meet Tim, I can just say this. He is the most conservative candidate in the race with an optimistic message that will make America feel good about itself again. And I think you see the threat he poses when Barack Obama has to go after him on national television. And you can see the opportunity this country has with the conservative policies that Tim Scott has already had success in, like tax cuts and opportunity zones.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more on the opportunity zone. That's been one that I think has been really underreported and such an important concept in terms of how do you really help people rise. And I think one of the unique components to a very positive message coming from Senator Scott in his presidential run is, hey, we can be happy warriors and we can be about principle and policy. And he's an example of how you actually run that path.
That's exactly right. And so an opportunity zone was devised by Senator Scott because he believed that there are pockets of America that haven't had the same benefits and opportunities of investment in jobs, manufacturing, and retail and housing that other parts of the country have seen. And so opportunity zones were created to encourage investment, to encourage those dollars to be invested in underinvested communities. Poor communities, communities of color, areas that haven't seen the same kind of wealth and success that perhaps other areas have seen. And so through his opportunity zones signed and passed into law, we've seen billions and billions of dollars be invested in these forgotten parts of our country. And it's creating jobs. It's creating opportunities where none existed before. And it's exciting to see that kind of leadership. And, when I first got elected with Tim in 2010, this is something that he set out. He would bring CEOs of companies across America in to meet with us through a group that he called the Opportunity Society. all focused on lifting up the least amongst us. And that is a powerful message from a firm believer in Tim Scott.
Yeah, and someone who's clearly, done that. His personal story is so compelling. I thought it was interesting. I noticed over the weekend, obviously, his parents were divorced. His dad was out of his life for a good chunk of his growing up. He's run the gamut and seen that, and yet, despite all of that, he's come back as an adult, reconnected with his dad, celebrated his dad on Father's Day. And to me, as I saw that play out on social media over the weekend, I thought that is just so refreshing to have someone who can get past kind of the populist grievance politics and kind of a grievance look at the world. And once again, Senator Scott showed just how you can actually do that.
And that really is a powerful message, Boyd. He talks about the lesson he learned from his grandfather is that you can be bitter or you can be better, but you can't be both. And that goes to the heart of this grievance. Look, I mean, in Colorado, Catherine Lee Bates in the late 1800s climbed up to the top of Pikes Peak and wrote the words to America the Beautiful. And the second phrase of America the Beautiful says, God mend thine every flaw. And I think Tim Scott is somebody who understands that we haven't had a perfect past. We've had grave sins in our past as a country. From slavery to the treatment of other minorities to women, Native Americans. But we worked hard to become that more perfect union. And as a result, you're looking at Senator Tim Scott, who had to say this week, we live in a great nation that's done things in the past that we've overcome today. We've got more work to do. We've had one black president. We're going to have more. And he's excited to share that message of optimism while he works to better the country, not blame the country.
Yeah, I think that's such an important message. And as you're part of this Opportunity Matters Fund action, obviously super PACs are a big part of presidential politics these days. We know the practical tacticals of getting messaging out and introducing a candidate to the country is a big deal. It takes a lot of resources and organization. Give us a sense in terms of, as you look at that, how do you see the path? What's the lane? What's the lay of the land right now?
Well, 4 weeks ago, if you looked at the polling, you really didn't see Tim Scott in the top 4, 5, or 6, maybe even. But today, you can see Tim Scott now moving into third place in Iowa. You can see that happening in New Hampshire. And it's all because he announced and his message is getting out there. You can see the ads talking about how he has faith in America. One of the websites I'd point you to is trustinthemission.com. Trust in the Mission has a great advertisement up and can tell you a little bit more about the work that is going on to support Tim Scott. And I think votetimscott.com is the other website that will help provide more information. But, getting money behind a message to help put Tim Scott in front of as many, his message, his vision in front of as many people across America as we can is going to work. Because once you hear Tim Scott, once you meet Tim Scott, you love Tim Scott. And that's the power that he has as a human being, a man of faith who deeply believes in God and his country. And once people see that, hear that, and feel it, they will be voting for him.
Great insight, great perspective. Former Senator Cory Gardner from the state of Colorado, now part of Opportunity Matters Fund action, super PAC supporting Senator Tim Scott in his race for the White House. And Senator Gardner, we appreciate you joining us on Inside Sources today. We look forward to having you back to continue the conversation as this all rolls forward. I think it is time for a different kind of conversation in the country, and love the direction that your group is heading for.
Well, great talking to you. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to being in Utah soon. Thanks.
That's former Senator Cory Gardner from Colorado, part of a super PAC that is supporting Senator Tim Scott in his race for the White House. Some important conversation components there and a positive message that I think is worth really reflecting on. We'll step aside for one last break, come back with some final thoughts on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This is Jeff Stout with Fink and McGregor Mortgages Made Simple. FHA has announced a significant reduction in mortgage insurance rates. This can be a game changer for some people. FHA rates are typically lower than conventional mortgage rates. Combine this with lower mortgage insurance and FHA is worth a look. FHA is especially attractive for low down payment, cash out, or credit issues. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer, and you can refinance into or out of an FHA loan. Another attractive feature of an FHA loan is the ability to streamline refinance when rates come down. No appraisal needed, limited documentation, and low cost helps you lower your payment with minimal fuss. Call us today. Fink and McGregor, Mortgages Made Simple, 801-264-9494. That's 264-9494. Or on the web at finkmcgregor.com. NMLS 289115.
In this market, you'll find Fisher Investments is different than other money managers.
Different how? Aren't we all just looking for the hottest stocks?
Nope. We use diversified strategies to position our clients' portfolios for their long-term goals.
You don't just provide cookie-cutter portfolios?
No. We tailor our clients' portfolios to their goals and needs.
But you still sell investments that generate high commissions for you, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We're a fiduciary, the highest standard of care for a financial advisor. It means we're obligated to act in our client's best interest.
So when do you make more money? Only when your clients make more money?
Yep, we have one transparent management fee structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Sounds like you really look out for your clients.
We do, because our priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. That might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments, clearly different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Our excellence is shining, yet so many of us are dying. Colon cancer is silently killing our people, our friends, and family. So screen we must. We do this for all of us. The health revolution must begin. From diagnosis to death rates, colon cancer can no longer win. Ravaging Black communities, colon screenings are a must. They're recommended for those 45 and up to pinpoint and treat the signs. If detected early, colon cancer is treatable, 91% beatable. It's on us to stand up to cancer once and for all. What's up? This is will.i.am, and I'm joining Stand Up to Cancer and Providence Health System to let you know that colon cancer affects the Black community at a higher rate. But there's hope. Getting screened for colon cancer can save your life. So learn about your screening options, including easy-to-use at-home tests. Ask your doctor or go to providence.org/colon cancer to determine which screening option is right for you.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Jessica Lowell. First, wind and warmer temperatures are increasing the danger of wildfire across Utah. Second, fans of the Utah Jazz will also be able to watch the games on free broadcast TV this season. Third, ships from the U.S. and Canada are trying to locate a missing submersive with 5 people aboard in the North Atlantic. Right now, it's 66 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back. Final segment of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson, and as we round out the program today, you know, one of the phrases that I hear over and over, and I've heard it for decades, from businesses to political consulting, I've heard it in so many different places and spaces, and that is a very simple phrase from a very exasperated person who says, it just shouldn't be this hard. And how often do you feel that it's so complicated, it's so difficult, when it really should be pretty easy and pretty straightforward. And businesses have an amazing ability to make things more complex. Politicians and political consultants can make things appear to be three-dimensional chess rather than straightforward checkers. And so everything continues to get more and more complex, and in some cases, in most cases, unnecessarily complicated. Norman Vincent Peale, I think, may have said it best of all. He said, "We struggle with the complexities and avoid the simplicities." And it's almost become a sport. It's almost become a badge of honor, I think, for many consultants, many within businesses. A lot of people who are trying to justify their jobs, they tend to make things more complicated than they need to be. And when we chase the complex at the expense of the simple, that's just become standard operating procedure in so many organizations, and especially in government. And it seems to be kind of an element of human nature that people are gladly willing to waste countless hours pursuing, exploring, evaluating, creating, recreating, and ultimately discarding really complex complex solutions to problems or opportunities when a very simple solution, a very simple decision could have gotten things done. It's actually a big form of procrastination because we're just going to make it more and more complicated, explore all the angles and avenues. And the reality is, if we just would have jumped in and done the simple thing, it would have been done. Problem solved, case closed, move on to the next thing. And I think the last thing the world needs is more complexity. When it comes to government, the last thing we need is one more blue ribbon committee to take something simple and transform it into something more complex. And the problem is the more complex it becomes, the less likely it is actionable at all. It becomes very unactionable. And there are probably more committee findings, committee reports, committee recommendations that are stuffed in drawers and files and dark spaces on the internet because no one could ever implement anything because it became so complicated that it became unwieldy, unmanageable, and ultimately undoable. So this is where we get into the challenge of it all. So it is true that we often talk about thinking outside the box. It's an important skill for our society, and that's true in many instances that we do need to think outside the box the way we've always done it, unless we've done it in such a complicated way that we actually haven't looked inside the box. Think about that. I'm all for thinking outside the box, but you shouldn't think outside the box until you've actually explored what is inside the box, because the solution, the simple solution, might actually be there. And again, some people wear this like it's some sort of badge of honor, this out-of-the-box solution thing. But in a lot of cases, out-of-the-box thinking becomes this form of procrastination. It actually becomes a way to avoid the real issues or the real tough decisions or the hard conversations. And there are a lot of folks, individuals, groups that end up waiting for their big idea solution to play out while their competitors have found simple solutions that actually work for the customer. As a business consultant, I saw that over and over and over again. And so what they're failing to recognize is that some things and sometimes a simple solution is enough. And spending all that additional time and resources is not productive. It's actually counterproductive. One of the areas that always was just so exasperating to me, both political parties, government agencies, seem to have this natural inclination towards complexity instead of simplicity. In fact, if you just look at the political platforms of the two major parties, each of them are over 30,000 words. A 30,000-word platform. And I've never known a Democrat or a Republican, once they were elected to office, have ever spent any time reading the 30,000-plus words of the platform. They've never made decisions based on it because it's too complicated. It's too long. When you're in the middle of a debate or you're on the floor of the House or the Senate, you don't have time to consult with a 30,000-word document. And these platforms grow over time. I have always found it interesting. I've always found it quite instructive that Abraham Lincoln, living in a very complicated time, actually ran on a platform that fit on a single piece of paper. It was less than 1,200 words. So it was less than a standard op-ed that you'd read on a news site. So the idea is to simplify. To paraphrase James Madison, because Hamilton gets way too much attention, I would say that this is how he said it. Madison said, "It will be of little avail to the party or to the American people if the platform, the bill, the campaign is so voluminous that it cannot be read, or so prescriptive that it cannot be understood." So the simplicity is to get back to the principles. Principles, simple principles, provide power. But often what happens, whether it's political parties or organizations, they have this zeal to have this all-encompassing document that actually makes them weak. I think powerful principles expressed in brevity, in simplicity, provide boldness and clarity that you just can't get anywhere else. I think this is also true in our personal lives. How often do we make things too hard by overanalyzing, or we're looking for that silver bullet magic solution on all kinds of things, from relationships to household organization, everything in between. Chasing the complex at the expense of the simple just keeps us hacking at the branches of life's issues instead of focusing on the root of those issues. So here's the rule of thumb for the day. Think outside the box only after you have explored inside the box. Because if you haven't looked at the simple solutions, you're going to chase the complexities, and you're not going to get anything that's going to move you forward or towards the solution that you're actually looking for. So evaluate how much of your time you're spending chasing the complexities versus the simplicities. And even more important, are you chasing the complexities at the expense of doing the simplicities? It applies to government, to politics, to business, and to our personal relationships. Well, that wraps it up for Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio today. I am Boyd Matheson. Thank you for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something today simply that will make a difference.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
It's 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Shaleo, sitting in today for Jeff Kaplan. Nice sunshine in downtown Salt Lake City, 65 degrees. KSL's top story. Hundreds of books in schools are being pulled throughout the state, but it's only because of a handful of complaints. KSL has been investigating how the numbers stack up at each school district. We have team coverage, Battle of the Books, beginning with KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe. Amy?
Maria, we sent grammar requests to every single school district in the state. We asked them for three things. First, what is their policy for deciding what books stay and what books go when they receive challenges?